Welcome back to Purposeful Marketing, the live version. Very excited about this. James and I have tried this once. We were like, we're not good at it. Let's bring Mary in. So here's round two. It's a great discussion today. A topic that our marketers deal with all the time, which is attribution. I think in spirit of what we want the show to be about, asking the why, diving into those philosophical questions, we want to ask the question, if attribution is dead, what do you do then? James, Mary, you guys have any thoughts?
Mary's going to start, I think.
That sounds good. So attribution is dead, which means marketing can't attribute leads or revenue to specific tactics or campaigns. So basically like, oh my God, what if how I measure marketing was stripped from me? What could I do? Now, there are some solves, like if we're talking like tactically. So what I found a lot of success with is getting qualitative customer insights via open text form fields on your high intent forms. So how did you hear about us? Tell us a little bit about your project, explain your inquiry, just stuff like that. They're going to likely reference channels that they found you in. So it could be, depending on what channels you're running, could be a podcast, could be Facebook, could be LinkedIn, stuff that is not easily attributable in marketing software. And yeah, I mean, in my perfect world, that is all marketing would be measured on, is qualitative customer insight. So, I mean, in my ideal world, attribution would be dead.
Love this. And I think with this question, there's really two routes I want to take, which is like, number one, what does it mean to have data as a marketer? Like, what does that equip you with? And number two, like, do your customers care? I think that's really the essence of this question is all three of us basically started our careers in a data-driven marketing world. That's changing in front of our eyes. Great. Now we can do other things with marketing. We can liberate ourselves. We can try things they did in the past. Often when I think about this question, there's over 3 decades of them not being able to attribute TV commercials, being on the radio, billboards. Yeah. You can go down the list, print copy, but yet these things compelled customers to buy stuff. Do you like that world, James? Do you remember that world?
I mean, I remember that world. I don't remember much, but I remember that world. I think that in terms of like being liberated from data, whether or not attribution is dead and whether or not we're going to miss it when we stop being able to get some of the data that we're happy to get now. I'm not really sure, but I do think that the way that you get liberated by not attributing and not attributing defined as like, we have a lead source that is produced by a software that we installed on our website. Like if we're talking about that type of attribution, like what you end up doing is you end up aligning on something that really, really, really matters, which is like the end business goal. Like, is the company reaching its end business goal? Because there's not data that's like, did the CEO meet what he was accountable for or she was accountable for? How happy is everyone at the end of your meeting? Like what, you can measure like individual things like growth, you can measure, market share. But like you're able to align on those without being like distracted, I guess, by, well, in the meantime, how we want to get there is X. And it's like, you're really limited when leadership is telling you the way that we're going to get where we want to go is this.
Yeah.
And it's like, sometimes they're right. Sometimes they might have a ton of experience, but they don't have the experience in marketing. And it's like, even if you're not the smartest person in the room, you might be the smartest person in the room about marketing that's not allowed to make a real marketing decision because you're tied to this sub goal that's not the overall business goal. It's supposed to help you get there. It's not your favorite way to get there. And you don't think it's going to get you there as fast as all the things you want to do. If you can't attribute that kind of stuff, then all of a sudden it's like, well, you sure won't have to, because the only reason you're doing it now is because it's attributable, because it's just a result you can show. So it's like when you don't have to show results that don't matter, you can do the things that you actually think work.
Yeah, and I think that's why we had this podcast and why I'm inviting people to think this way too. Quite often, and really in the last couple of months, as really the economy has done certain things, I'm hearing people talk about provable marketing again. And it's kind of like, how is that coming up? We just talked about this for 2 years to try to get out of it. I think the reason being is, epiphany I had is most data that we deal with in B2B points back to marketing. So even if you're in sales, you're still looking at MQLs, leads, opportunities, that waterfall, that volume. Okay, well, those are still marketing metrics, right? I think a couple episodes ago, I was talking about a client that everything from marketing data went up. What more can you do as a marketer, right? Is if all the data is pointing to the right direction, but we're not winning more revenue, it falls on marketing's hand because of the data. I think that's what's so like confounding for me, is like the data itself is really dictating kind of what you're talking about, James, is like, you know, what should we do? But we did marketing many, many years before that without any of that. Is that going to be the new forefront of where we're going to go? Now, I'll kind of throw this over to you, Mary, because you may have experienced this firsthand, is we already saw this happen about a year and a half ago when the iOS 14 update happened. Yeah. Now all your Facebook data is skewed. Doesn't make sense. Yeah. What do you do then as a marketer?
Yeah, I was just listening to this on like another podcast, and I think it was a guy from like Hawk Media or something, and they do like one-off campaigns for small businesses. And same thing happened. So iOS 14, and they're like, oh my God, we like have no visibility. And he's like, oh, well, like are click-through rates the same? Like, well, yeah. Okay, like are leads the same? Well, yeah. And like, he's like, okay, are opportunities now? Well, no. And so it's like, yeah, you got to look at it in like the big picture, right? And like what you guys are both saying, I love. And it's like, if we had an attributeless world, you could get back to like innovation and creativity in marketing, right? And like when you think about companies who do marketing really well, they are super creative. Did you see the post of Fanuc's trade show booth?
No.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, they had this giant yellow robot holding a car in the middle of the trade show floor. Like they owned that trade show. Like everyone went to it. Do you think they like went to their boss and were like, okay, well, we got 10 leads that justified the cost of this awesome robot? Like, no, they were being creative. They wanted to shock and awe their audience. They wanted to delight people. And like, that's awesome. Now, their marketing team is probably doing a lot of other stuff that's like really great and can be attributed. But I think marketing should be free to have those opportunities to do something wild, creative, innovative.
Yeah, I think that's the world we all want to live in. And
yeah.
I don't know how we get there. Something we're pinpointing that's important is, and I'm going to throw this over to you in a second, James, is, you know, data is just a number, and what it needs is context. It needs that storytelling. Kind of what you're talking about with Fanuc is there's a story to that, and then we need to have some data to it, and that gets better marketing. But quite often we just start with the data, right? And that's what dictates what we're going to do for the rest of the year. That's what we dictate to use to make our stories, our messaging, all that. You know, if numbers are just dumb, James, isn't that context important?
I mean, yes. And I guess my head is going maybe kind of away from.
Please do. Take it wherever you want.
Yeah.
And into like, I want to say like, be careful what you wish for, because I can see two things going wildly wrong. If like, let's say all of a sudden, all the data that you currently use to track companies currently use to track marketing, let's say you didn't have any of it. The data that you would have data about what currently is like sales data. Basically, how many calls did you make? How many deals did you close? What was your average deal value? And if we can't track any marketing stuff, the people that are addicted to tracking data are just going to be focusing more on that, which is honestly probably great. But they're going to be looking for marketing to support that in potentially not a very creative way. Your job is now sales support again. Your job is now like, how do you make the numbers for that meeting go up? Like, what can marketing do to help your close rate, like in the meeting? Like, I have a really strong feeling that a lot of business leaders will forget everything we learned about how marketing impacts that by doing marketing and not by doing sales support. That salespeople are great at increasing that by just being better salespeople, and marketing is good at increasing that by just doing better brand marketing. I have a feeling a lot of people are going to forget that if they no longer see any of the marketing data and start to reassociate marketing with the people that help sales with the pamphlets and the people that help sales with, you know, oh, can you like copy edit this email? This is a huge account. We can't lose this account. Like, I have to win this. What should my nurture email look like? And it's like, this is you're supposed to be able to have this conversation like as the salesperson maybe, but now marketing's just supporting that. The other thing that I feel like is going to happen, because you guys are saying like you can get back to innovation, you can get back to being, you know, doing creative things and trying to have maybe delight your audience more is a good way of putting it, Mary. But like, I don't know, I have a feeling we were talking a couple weeks ago about being original versus imitating. And I think I can see a lot of people forgetting like the why of like, why are we wanting to do something creative? Like, why are we wanting to be different? You know, because in a way, the number is what allows a detached person, that's as close as they get to connecting with the customer. You know, if you're not really thinking about the customer all the time, the way that you end up thinking about them is in that number. If you don't have that number anymore, you're even more detached than you were before. I feel like those are two things that I would say, like, if we just lost all the data that we say is holding us back and keeping people from letting us do our job the way we really want to, I have a feeling that what we get might not be what we want.
Yeah.
Because again, we're mostly talking about companies where marketing doesn't have the same seat at the table in the first place. So, you know, it's like you don't necessarily want total chaos if you don't get to make any decisions about how you handle that.
Oh, okay, so that's interesting. I like this.
Take it away.
Do you think, Aaron, so on James's point, taking it like one step further, in an attributeless world, or if we're in this like, where is marketing? Is it like more brand? Is it more, you know, sales support? We don't know because we don't have the data. Is it going to be easier to find companies who get marketing?
Oh yeah, it's such a good question. I think there's a lot of companies who don't get marketing and right now with data, and it's going to be so much harder when they don't have data. I think generally why this is an appealing topic and why I like it is because it's going to force people to rethink everything.
Yes.
And also it's kind of a trick question because it's going to happen. Like we know next year at this time, this month, 2023, Google's doing two things. They're retiring Google Analytics and they're going to remove session cookies. Those are two aspects of data marketing that we've lived with over a decade.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do then? You know, and I think for marketers, it's going to be very, very challenging because I totally grasp and understand why you have to have data and KPIs and measurement. Because again, Peter Drucker's, if you can measure it, you can manage it. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes the tides go.
Sure.
But it doesn't go like answer our central question of what we always talk about is what's best for the customer.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I've had my own headaches with data is, you know, maybe it's like we need to get inbound leads up, not inbound demo volume. You know, maybe we need to boost MQLs. These are all very self-serving marketing, internal company metrics. And it doesn't quite often relate to actually helping the customer. So if we just take data out of there, like what would you do, right? Like you would go maybe talk to your customer. Maybe you go figure, talking to that customer, like we don't have videos. Like, great, I'll go make videos. It just sounds like a much beautiful world when you remove that data. I guess, James or Mary, do you have any follow-ups to that or thinking?
My thinking is like, if your company if your company doesn't really support you talking to your customer now, They're not going to support you talking to your customer just because they don't have anything else for you to do. You're just going to get fired. Like, I mean, if the only things they want you to do are produce things that all of a sudden we can't measure, and leadership doesn't have like a massive shift in terms of what they actually want out of marketing, like, honestly, the easiest thing to do from a, like, what is your margin standpoint this year while we figure out how to survive the loss of analytics, the easiest thing to do is just get rid of the marketing department. I mean, like, what, like, if the only way you know how to, like, think about the success of the human beings in your team is through something like that, if that's the only lens through which you're capable of assessing someone's value, and you lose that, like, I don't want to be at the company that loses that, because, you know, the things that I want to do haven't changed, and their willingness to let me do them probably hasn't changed either. I think the thing that everyday marketers can do, which is the same thing that they can do now, is you can always, like, incrementally do better things that align with your goals. Like, maybe you can't really get company buy-in to, like, let you talk to big account customers and learn about them because, like, they don't want to upset the distribution network that wants, you know, exclusive access to them. Maybe you can't do that, but there are small things you can start doing to gain some of that understanding. Like, it's still valuable. I think maybe, hopefully, when all the data goes away, maybe you have, you know, insight that you can share. You know, maybe you have something that you've learned by doing what you think are the right things, talking to customers, getting actual qualitative understanding of what's going on in the market. You know, speaking with, you know, you can be a voice for the engineering team at your company or the product development team at your company. You know, when people are trying to figure out what marketing should do, it's probably really helpful to be like, well, I know what, like, the product team wants marketing to do that we're not doing right now, because I've talked to them, and, like, my best friend is the guy that writes the software. He's the guy I go to get drinks with. Like, I mean, I think that is maybe going to be more important when companies that are so data driven and so data focused rather than, like, data guided, all of a sudden have no idea what they're doing with marketing. Like, you can have an answer ready because maybe they'll actually ask you what you think. You know, maybe that'll be when you get asked, like, for a lot more input and you get taken seriously, is when all of a sudden they realize how little they understand what's actually going on and what you're actually producing for the company in a meaningful way.
Actually did exactly what
Nice.
you just described at my own company. It's
Sweet.
so fun. You, like, almost described my exact journey. We weren't allowed to talk to customers because of that exact thing. They were scared that we'd throw it off. Sales owned the customer, so they did not feel comfortable letting marketing talk to customers. The product teams very clearly wanted to talk to customers, but we're in those same shackles. So sales owns it, it kind of gets filtered, and really the product development team just makes product, tells the sales team this product exists, the sales team goes out and sells it, right? So that's where I found my inroad. I was like, well, how can I talk to customers without really talking to literally our customers? So I bought a LinkedIn Sales Navigator license, and it was free for 30 days. So a little plug for you there. And just picked out some people in our ICP because you can filter it out in Sales Navigator. So job title, industry, even, like, company, if you really wanted to do, like, an ABM thing, which a couple of our market development teams needed to do. And I just cold call, and you can send, like, 50 in-mail messages a day, I think. I just blanket threw out this message: hey, my name is Mary, I'm a new marketer in this industry. This is not a sales call. I just want to learn about your business and what you do for this company a little bit. I won't take up more than 15 minutes of your time. That was, like, huge. And, like, you're going to get rejected a lot. Like, I sent probably 75 requests in total because you get new credits, new in-mail credits every month. And if someone replies to you, you get that credit back. So I probably sent 75 and got to talk to maybe 10 people. So just giving you guys some context. And it was great. And what I did was took very detailed notes throughout these conversations, let the people know, hey, I'm not recording, I'm just taking notes so I can like reference it later since I'm learning about this industry, and then turn those into call reports, directly sent those call reports to the product development teams, and they freaking loved it. They were like, we have been so desperate for this, you know, it helps us out so much, and like, you know, it just spirals. That was really like a huge growth point for me in my career. So that's just a story that, yes, what James said is A, true, and B, works.
Yeah, I love those real world examples. And I think, you know, with this kind of show, we're really taking a hard angle of saying something doesn't work or does work. I think there's that middle ground. And James, you were kind of hinting at this. I'll just use the terms that I've seen other marketers use. It's not an original idea. Is, you know, you need to move from being data driven to data informed. And that informed part, that's where that qualitative stuff can come in. That's where that innovation, that creativity, right? Because we just have the data that doesn't always prove we're doing the right thing. But talking to your customers, getting that qualitative directional feedback from some of these aspects we use in our programs, like the how did you hear about us? Perfect. You know, going on LinkedIn, seeing exactly who commented on your ad. Is that someone in your target ICP? Those qualitative things are going to make us much, much better because the data is going to get worse. It's not getting better.
Yeah.
You know, we already have seen this. And again, with the Google thing next year, it's going to be even more impactful than the iOS 14, in my opinion. So if we're going to live in a world where data can't be trusted, maybe we'll trust ourselves as marketers. I think that's a beautiful world. And I think if we can get there, like that's where I want to be. Anyone have any general thoughts about maybe just aspects of when you've been asked in your job to provide some kind of data report? You have any challenges in that? I have a couple, but I want to throw it to the group.
Yeah, for sure. In my old job, like before I came to Gorilla on the agency side, I was measured on activities. So I had to send a weekly report at the end of the week and list out all my activities for the week. So, I mean, not like data, but it was very frustrating. I mean, you're not measured on anything qualitative. You're not measured on anything that necessarily makes a business impact. It's just, this is what I did for the week. Yeah, so that's just one. Another one where I kind of left the hurdle of being data-driven versus data-informed. You know, as an agency, you're really pressured to prove your value to a company, right, or to a client. And in a lot of cases, because data is going away, there is part of it that's black boxed, right? We just can't see it. We don't know. And the way that I've gone through that is what I said earlier. You know, are we seeing the right people come in? Are they coming in at a higher rate? And are you shortening your sales cycle because they're more informed about you and your product? Are they doing bigger orders? You know, those are ways that you can kind of leap that hurdle of being data driven versus data informed. What do you think, Aaron?
Totally. I think that where I want to take this is, again, for our listeners, who you're probably, as you move up and senior in your career, you're probably specializing in one channel. I think this is where you're going to have the biggest headaches. I've seen it in all channels, but the two big ones is Google and Facebook. You know, Google back in the day, I would always have issues where before I was working with companies that had a really clean CRM, and I think that's also part of this discussion is if you want to be data informed, have a CRM that works and filled with data. One of the issues was your conversion tracking would be messed up, and there's really nothing you can do. It's like, this is what Google Ads is telling me. I'll get real technical. It's like, you know, I would have the Google Tag Manager tag on the right pages. I would double check them, debug them. And then I would be like, let me just remove that and see if my data changes. And it would still record conversions, right? So that's confounding. That was like my first kind of eye-opening thing where the marketing technology is telling me one thing and now I can't trust it. Yeah. I think the other big one that's happened to many marketers over the last year, and I think really brought all our attention to this, is like the iOS 14. As again, we forget that like Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, like these are products and they're constantly improving, getting better, iterating. And when you saw your data for that time period and that transition, you're like, there's no way this is accurate at all. I don't even know how to act on it, right? But if we go back to the central question of like, what do my customers want? Where are they at? They're on Facebook. Yeah. So it would just not even be a good strategy for me to pull my effort from there. Right. I think there's many examples like that. And I think marketers, as we go forward this next year, DM us, ask us questions, throw this at us. We're constantly in our marketing network asking each other too, like, hey, is LinkedIn working for you? I think that's good practice. James, you look like you're about to say something.
I don't know. Oh, I mean, like in terms of having to report on data, like I think like a fun example that's kind of similar to when you're thinking about like the kind of the marketing funnel. So it's like you were, you were a marketing qualified lead, and then you were X, and every company has different names for everything. But I sold internet and phone service door to door, like a long time ago. I think I only lasted a month. But the only thing you're judged on, like you're paid based on selling internet. It's the only thing that actually matters. Selling AT&T TV. How many TV packages did you sell? But you're judged at the end of the shift. You know exactly how you're judged because Salesforce is you're doing everything in Salesforce. It knows how many doors you knocked on. It knows how many people answered the door. It knows how many people you got past the initial, get the hell off my property. I have a no soliciting sign, can't you read type of stuff. How many people you were able to explain, you were able to pitch the full pitch to. It knows all of that because you input all that data. And you run your whole business on law of averages. Like if I knock on 60 doors, I'm going to pitch 5 times, and hopefully I should win one, that one person that I pitched to. And it's like, that's what you're actually judged on, is all these things that don't actually tell you the whole picture of what happened. Like what happened could have been like, yeah, I knocked on a ton of doors and I had a horrible attitude and I hated my job and it was raining. And like most of the doors I knocked on was after 7 p.m. because I had a super long conversation where I didn't make a sale early in the day and wasted all my daylight. Now I'm knocking on people's doors when it's dark out and they're eating dinner. You miss like all kinds of context about what obviously that sort of activity is just not cool or fun or interesting for a customer anyway. You already are missing the point when you're going door to door, but it's really interesting to then the next day when the boss is like looking at everyone's numbers and we're talking about them, you start to see like when the data is flawed because, well, like technically, yes, I did get through the pitch with this, but I remember this person and it was like, I didn't know if I should count it as let's say I got to stage 3 versus stage 2. I have no idea. I had to pick one, like, because I need to go knock on the next door. You file it under something, but how valuable is that really? How accurate is that really? It's like you feel like you didn't actually get any better when you're thinking about those numbers. I only felt like I got better when someone who had done it a lot was there with me, helping me do it. Or watching someone else do it. The only things that were helping me were qualitative and feeling. And that's not necessarily true, like, in every circumstance across every business, but, like, there is an amount that you need to be able to trust what you're doing, like you said. Like, if you can trust yourself, that's going to be way more helpful than you feeling like you can trust data, because, for one, even when it is working, it might not be telling you anything with context. When it's not working, you might have nothing at all to fall back on if you're not interested in things like the context of how your customer buys, the context of what your customer wants. I feel like it's now a sad example. I shouldn't have started talking when I sold internet door to door.
Okay, well, I think, just to kind of wrap up here is, I think what I want to get across is, one, you're not alone.
Yeah.
Quite often the data confounds me. It makes me mad. It doesn't work. Sometimes it does. We're all in the same boat. I think there's a huge opportunity, an exciting one. And again, we know these changes are going to happen, and then we're going to have to change our actions. So I'm excited to see what that is. I think most of us, it's the fear of unknown in marketing, but if you don't like that, get out of marketing. I don't know. But to like your point, James, I think, that's a great story. And there's a lot of great data stories, and data is not going to go away, but I think how we deal with it needs to be different. And if you can take anything out of the episode, take that. Also take that we're doing this live. It's going to be on Spotify. It's going to be on Apple Podcasts. We're getting to more places. We have more reach. please give us a DM, give us some feedback, some thoughts. If you like it, if you don't like it, thank you for being on this journey. Thank you for listening to three of us. We're figuring it out as we go. So appreciate y'all.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.